Last year, the Wildcats were 29-6. They were 17-4 in the Southeast Conference, which shows their power. Lost just 2 games outside the conference. They lost to LSU in the tournament and won the Southeast Conference in standing with a 17-4 record. Went to the Mid-East Regional, beat Florida State University, lost to Duke at Rupp Arena. On November 29th, they begin their 1980-81 basketball season against East Tennessee State. In the preseason polls that you read in various books, Street and Smith, Playboy, if you put much stock in that poll, but a lot of polls, they are rated number 1. And also by several magazines around the country have been saying that the recruiting class of the University of Kentucky is the best there has been, or at least this year, in the country. It includes Dickie Beal from right here in Northern Kentucky, Jim Master, Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana, Brett Barrett, a 6'9" forward, and Melvin Turpin out of a military school? Yes, a prep school out of Kentucky. They had an inter-squad game last Tuesday at Barron County and had thousands of people there rooting on the Cats. And Friday, they will take on the South Korean national team as they begin their 1980-81 season. I'm talking about, of course, the coach of the Kentucky Wildcats. Of the Kentucky Wildcats. Wait a minute, I got to make sure I got the right thing here. Yes, the coach of the Kentucky Wildcats, Mr. Joe B. Hall. How are you, Coach?
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good evening. How's practice going?
Well, we're struggling, but
here we go. First tee time again, Coach.
For a junior college, we're not doing bad.
Yeah, you're not doing bad. Coach, I know you got a lot of new people down there, and I know you got a lot of people to look at before you really decide on who is going to be your starting lineup. I know it's also premature to make you commit to a starting lineup, but is there anybody that you have down in Kentucky that you can say right now, come November 29th against East Tennessee State, that you will expect to be a starter?
I can pick 3 right now, Bob. Don't think there's any question. It's Sam Bowie, Dirk Manifield at the guard, and Fred Count at a forward. We need their experience very much, and they're going to be big factors in leading this young squad. And 2 of those are sophomores themselves, and Fred is our only senior.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to call on those early in the year.
Yeah. Joe, would you expect the other 2 spots to be filled by maybe 4 or 5 people as opposed to just 2?
I think that there's all 4 or 5 that are in contention for those other 2 spots. I think we'll see a lot of different combinations depending on whether we're going with height, quickness, what our opposition presents, and what we're trying to do offensively and defensively.
I understand. We are very interested here in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area about Dickie Beal. How has he done in the first few weeks of preseason for you?
Dickie's going to be very important to us because he is a good ball handler. He can get the ball into play offensively, and that's going to be a factor early in the season.
Mm-hmm. How about Sam Bowie? I noticed that he played a lot of Olympic basketball. I noticed that he played a lot of basketball throughout the summer, giving him as much experience. Has he picked up any weight? Has the experience over the summer really shown in his preseason practice?
Definitely has, especially in the way of confidence. I think that's the main thing that Sam picked up through his Olympic play was the increase in confidence that he has. He's weighing at 230 right now, which is about, I'd say about 12 pounds over what he weighed when he started the Olympic gold medal games.
Mm-hmm. Is it tough for him to gain weight?
No, not too much. He was up to 235, and after the practices start, he has cut down 5 of those pounds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about Melvin Turpin, another 6'11" kid, raw bone, not very big, but how's he fitting into your offense?
Bob, you wouldn't believe Turpin. He's one of the best eaters that we have on the team. He came in weighing 202, and at the start of the summer, and he got up to about 217 by the time school started. He went on and increased his weight to 240.
Ooh.
And we've trimmed him down to 230. I'm sorry, 248.
248?
And he's trimmed down now to 238. We thought he would really lose a lot of that weight when we got into the hard practices, but so far he's held on to it pretty good. And
yeah.
He weighed 238 this last waiting period.
Apparently, at the prep school that he attended last season, they didn't feed him very well, right?
Oh, I think that he just was a raw bone string bean, and it took a little while to put the weight on him.
Yeah. Joe, you mentioned Freddie Cowan and what an important role he's going to play on your basketball team this year. I noticed that that very late in the season, when you got down to the tournament time in the Southeast Conference tournament and also into the NCAA tournament, Fred had a couple of games that were, if you watched Fred Cowan for the entire season, and we were fortunate enough here to see you guys play a lot, was a lot different at the end of the season as opposed to the way we saw Fred Cowan at the front. He really began to grab a hold of the ball and really go for the basket and really be very, very aggressive instead of laying back. A tremendous change in his attitude. Has he carried that forward to the preseason of 1980 and 81?
Yes, he has. Fred is a real surprising athlete. Fred's another player that's put on a lot of weight since he's been here at Kentucky, and he's playing at right at 220 right now. I think he'll drop down to about 215. But when he came here as a freshman, he was weighing in the 170s. So the weights have been good for him, and he has tremendous ability. He's 6'9", he's very mobile, very quick, has good jumping ability, and plays excellent defense for us. His future is probably as a defensive forward in the pros, and a player that can move and is as agile as Fred is certainly has an opportunity to help out some teams.
Yeah.
And his offensive awakeness is coming on the end of the season last year was predicted. We felt that Fred had the offensive moves, and as he gained maturity and strength, he was going to be a big factor for us. And in his game against LSU that won the conference championship for us, he had 28 games, and then he came back, of course, in that game against Duke. At the end of the season, had 26. And Fred has started off this year. He's looked very good. He's a leader on our squad, and he does a fine job both on and off the court in the direction of our younger players.
I know that you're now missing Kyle Macy, and I do know also that your offense, or really your team, is led by a guard. Is that guard in 1980 and 81 going to be, is it going to be Dirk Minifield, or might it turn out to be someone like Jim Master?
Dirk is our designated leader right now. Dirk has a lot of leadership ability. He was on a state championship team here in Lexington, Lafayette High School. He was the leader of that team, and he's very much assumed that role here. He's an excellent defensive player. He's a good passer, has great quickness, and he'll take over more of the leadership since Macy's gone.
That's terrific. That's terrific. I know Kyle is someone who is absolutely non-replaceable in any college basketball program, but when you
don't replace people like him.
That's right. You just got to get along without him.
In a different direction.
Yeah, that really is the sign of a good basketball coach, when you can come up with another guy to not fill the shoes of Kyle Macy, but take over his role, whatever it may be.
I know a lot about trying to fill shoes, and you're better off just set them aside and head in another direction.
Have they still got that big blue chair down there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't blame them. I think they should have it. Joe, can you give me quickly your estimation of through the first half of the season where your tough games are going to come? We know the Southeast Conference is going to be tough. I'm sure Alabama, LSU, even though they lost Fred Cook. Who else? Tennessee has got to be tough again, probably. But where's your big competition coming from this year?
If you saw our schedule, you'd see right off that in December we're going to have as much challenge as a team would want to face. And we'll play Ohio State very early in the year. We play Indiana again, as they've become a traditional rival. We play them on their home court early in December, December the 6th. And Kansas, December the 13th. Ohio State, incidentally, December the 3rd. So those three games, 3rd, the 6th, and the 13th, we'll pretty much find out what kind of team we have.
Yeah.
Notre Dame after Christmas, December the 27th, and that game in Louisville. And that one always is a big game for our fans and our players as well. The conference itself, I think you pretty much named it. LSU returns 4 starters, and they're a team that won 2 out of 3 over us last year, and I can't help but believe that they'll be as good or better than they were last year. So we lose 3 of our top 6 in Macy and Jay Scheidler and Levon Williams, and we've got a much more of a rebuilding job to do than I think some of the other teams in our conference. The teams that are going to give us the most trouble are those who are veteran ball clubs that were good ball clubs last year, such as LSU, such as Indiana and Ohio State, which comes back with good veteran clubs. Notre Dame has got a lot of good veterans back. In our own conference, LSU probably returns the most starters intact. Vanderbilt comes back with a good team because Charlie Davis is eligible again this year, and he's one of the premier players in our conference, and certainly he's going to improve the Vanderbilt ball club. I think they'll be a surprise this year because they were just a player away last year. Auburn has their front line back, and I believe will be much better than a lot of people give them credit for. Georgia, second to us, have had the best recruiting success in the conference for the last 2 years. They're young like we are, but extremely talented.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Alabama returns the bulk of their lineup for next year, losing Ra Scott last year, but having some good young players to fill in, and they had a good recruiting year also. So our conference is plenty tough. Tennessee is always tough for us, and it seems like that our opponents have no trouble getting up for us, and it's always a battle anytime we go on the floor against a conference member.
Since you bring up the fact that it's never tough for your opponent to get up for the Kentucky Wildcats, what does being ranked number 1 preseason do to your ball club, do to your players as young as they are?
Well, first of all, Bob, it's a stimulation to your program to be ranked number 1. We accept that, and that's where you want to be, and we're very happy that some of the early pollsters have picked us number 1. It is a compliment to our program and to our players. As far as motivation and really getting you into the fight, sometimes it's a little better to be picked back in the pack and kind of surprise the pollsters, gain some momentum as you climb to the top. Often in that first spot, you develop a philosophy of playing to keep from getting beaten. And as you say again, it's an extra incentive for your opponents to come in, not only play Kentucky, but also play the number 1 team in the nation. We certainly use that when we're facing the number 1 team in the nation.
Sure.
And I know it's a hardship to fight that determination of a team that comes in and gives that extra effort to knock you off.
Yeah. Do you feel that when you are rated preseason number 1, you get a lot of extra publicity and a lot of extra people down there that may disrupt your routine, your pattern of practice?
We're not going to complain about that, Bob. That's not that kind of a problem. It does make your life a little busier, but no objections to that at all. And the excitement of that type activity only tends to make the young players appreciate the program more.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, this is Sports Talk on WLW. Joe B. Hall is our guest. Coach, we're going to take a break quickly and come back with phone calls here on Sports Talk at 749-3420. It's your turn, people out there, to talk to what I think is the best basketball coach in the country.
If you're calling long distance for Bob Trumpy and Sports Talk, please take note of our toll-free numbers. In Ohio, call 1-800-582-1701. 1-800-582-1701. If you're calling out of state, call 1-800-543-0471. That's 1-800-543-0471.
And if you're calling locally on Sports Talk, 749-3420. With Joe Hall, our guest here, the coach of the University of Kentucky Bearcat basketball team. I know there are a lot of you out here who want, the Wildcats, and don't forget it. Yes, you are right. Well, anyway, Joe Hall is on the phone with us. We got a couple of lines open there, so hurry, will you, at 749-3420. Good evening. Thank you for waiting. You're on Sports Talk with Joe Hall.
Coach Hall, this is Ira in Lexington, Kentucky, and could you tell Bob Trumpy who's going to be the number 1 team in basketball when the season's over with?
I'll tell you, that's a tough one. I'm not ever one to go out on a limb in that manner. To wind up number one in the nation requires so many things, including luck, including getting through the year without injuries and sickness, and it just takes an awful lot of ingredients to come up number one. Every team in the country hopes to be there, and there's no question about it. There are a large number that have the potential to be there this year.
Joe, let me fill you in on why this guy asked the question. My pick to end up the season as the number one team, everyone has their choice. I am picking UCLA, and I'm picking it for a scientific reason. They are returning 4 starters. They are all sophomores, but they played close to 28 to 30 games together last year. And I think anybody in basketball will admit that experience is probably the best thing to have in college basketball. They lost one person, and that was Kiki Vandeweghe, who was a kind of a rubber cement for the offense. But they have that team reminds me, those 4 guys, those 4 freshmen, remind me so much of the Loyola of Chicago team back in '63 under, I believe his name was George Ireland. With Vic Rouse and Les Hunter and Jerry Harkness, how they all came up together, and they're just my pick. I mean, I hope that Kentucky wins, but they're my pick because of the experience.
I think there are several teams, Bob, that you could pick for the same reason, and UCLA is definitely one of them.
Okay, caller, you didn't get me in trouble, but I know you tried.
Yeah, and there's one other thing,
Sure.
Coach Hall, that I think that you've done an outstanding job, and everybody in Kentucky is very proud of you, and we still have a love affair with the Wildcats.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your phone call. Where do we go? Douglas, give me a line. All right. Good evening. Thank you for waiting. It's your turn on Sports Talk with Joe Hall.
Yes, Joe?
Yes.
Speak up, caller. Will you please right into the phone?
Yes, Joe?
Yes.
Yes, there's been much talk about the forward you got. I think it was out of Philadelphia, was it? Can't get his name right offhand.
New York, Brett Barrett.
Yes.
Yes.
A lot of people have compared him with Darryl Dawkins in the future. What do you think about that?
He's not the same type player Darryl Dawkins was. Darryl, you remember they called him Awesome Dawkins, and he was a physical specimen, mature beyond his years coming out of high school, and he was a powerful inside player. Brett Barrett is as much of a finesse player as he is a strength player. His development's going to lead him to being a good outside player. I compare him a little bit to Dan Is, the good outside shot. I compare him a little to Bobby Jones from North Carolina. Was a very mobile player, and I would like to see Brett Barrett develop along those lines.
Do you think LeMaster will eventually fill Kyle Macy's shoes at Kentucky?
Jim Master is kind of taking the same view that Bob Trumpy and I talked about, that you don't try to fill somebody's shoes. Jim's going to be his own player and develop his game to his strong points, and he has many of them, and he's going to be an outstanding player. He's an excellent shooter. He's got a degree of quickness that he's going to put to good use, and he'll develop in a little different way than Macy.
Yeah, and caller, if you're a Kentucky fan, don't put that monkey on Jim Masters' back.
That's right.
Give him a break, will you? I mean, the man hasn't even taken the floor yet, and already you want him to be Kyle Macy. That's not an easy task. Thanks for your phone call.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Joe Hall, our guest here on Sports Talk, and we go to line 7. Thank you for waiting. You're on Sports Talk with Joe Hall.
Yes, I was wondering about your third game this year is with Ohio State, and I wonder if you think you'll be ready and what your scouting report was so far for Ohio State.
Really, our second regular season game is with Ohio State. We're opening tomorrow night against the South Korean team that's taken over the Russian schedule. And then we have one other game before Ohio State, and that's what we consider our opener, November the 29th, against East Tennessee State. And Ohio State comes up on the 3rd of December on a Wednesday night here in Lexington. Our scouting report, of course, we haven't really got into digesting the report, but we do know their personnel very well, and there's no question that Herb Williams is one of the finer players in the country this year, and they have a player that we were very much interested in recruiting, Clark Kellogg, that was in our summer camp here one year and was the most valuable player we had in that camp. And some of the players that were here with him were James Worthy and Ralph Sampson and a few others of that caliber. So we think a lot of Clark Kellogg. He's a fine young man and an excellent basketball player. And we know that they do return what we call a veteran ball club, and playing a veteran ball club with our youth that early in the year is we're going to have our work cut out for us.
Yeah, they're also veteran up front, too, with Smith, with Williams, and Kellogg on the front line there. Those guys have had 1 year together. That's tough.
They're going to miss Ramsey, much the same as we'll miss Macy. And but I just believe that the experience is going to be very important early in this ball game.
Joe, I wonder if you can make a comment about something that's mentioned a great deal now, it appears, in college basketball, and that some of the announcers that do the games feel there's a tremendous difference in the way basketball is played from conference to conference. Do you feel that in playing in the Southeast Conference and then going out of the conference and playing these two opponents from the Big Ten?
Not as much as there used to be. I think that was true years ago, but there is more a general unified officiating throughout the country that has something to do with that. I think you used to run into the situation that the game was called one way in the South, another way in the Northeast, and an entirely different way in the Midwest, and then they played another game altogether out in the West. But officiating is more uniform, and that's made the game, I would say, more uniform throughout the nation. The Big Ten has been known as a little more of a physical conference than the Southeastern Conference. The Northeast, a little more of a running style of play.
Okay, thanks for your phone call, caller. Joe Hall, our guest here on Sports Talk, and thank you for waiting. It's your turn.
I'd like to speak to Joe Hall, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, say, are you going to use Sam Bowie and Melvin Turpin like you did Mike Phillips and Rick Roby?
I think eventually we will, and it took us a little while to develop the style of play between those two players that we really wanted, but it became a strong point for us before their careers ended, and I hope that we can develop this strength with two big men in the lineup at the same time. Early in the year, I would say that we'll play them together very little, but as Turpin begins to come on and Bowie settles in and begins to pick up some moves at the forward position or the high post, well, we will play them together. You will definitely see them before the season's over in the game, maybe 10, 12 minutes at a time together.
Coach, would you please, I live in Newport, Kentucky, my name is Mr. Sidner, would you ask Mr. Trumpy there, why has he picked UCLA over your ball club?
We already covered that, and I told him why. And he said there are a lot of teams to consider, and UCLA is one of them, and so is Kentucky. My name is Bob. Thank you very much. Joe, a question for you. Judging the talent of this basketball team, and you've now been there for several years, and judging the age of this basketball team, is there any tendency on your part to rush this team? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your answer. I think in 2 years, you're going to have probably an experienced basketball team with all the facets of the game under their belt, a lot of experience in tough games in tournament play in the Southeast Conference and in several appearances in the NCAA. Is this team in 1980 and 81, is it a national champion? And you've had many?
This team has the potential to be, Bob, and no, I'm not going to rush them. The fans and the media might try to rush them a little, but I'm going to be patient with them. I'm really pleased with them, tremendously pleased with their attitude and their cohesiveness and the compatibility that they have among their squad. And they work hard, and that's all I can ask of them. They are going to develop into a good ball club. When? It's somewhere in the future. I'm not going to put any restrictions on them. I think with guys like Sam Bowie and Derek Horde and Dirk Menafield and Charles Hurt and people of this caliber of talent, and older players like Chuck Viderber and Fred Cowan, that they do have a lot of potential. And our 4 freshmen coming on, how fast they develop, and add to what those older players can do. I'm not going to put any restrictions on potential of them.
Yeah, they
our really bright spot is next year and the next year.
They could jump up and grab somebody though this year. You're right, with all the talent.
And I'm not going to hold them back. I hope.
I didn't think you would. All right, thank you for waiting. You're on Sports Talk with Joe Hall of Kentucky.
Hello, this is Tom Bingham from Daleville, Alabama. Like I say, I enjoy your show, Bob. I'd like to speak to Joe.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Joe, this is Tom. I'm originally from a little town, Hebron, Kentucky.
Right.
Got 2 questions to ask you. Last year, every time we went into our 1-3-1 zone, they always put somebody on the corners, and they shot us blind. Do we have anybody can do it this year if they go in the zone against us?
We'll just have to wait and see. We think we have some good outside shooters, and Sam Bowie's not bad putting it up from outside. And,
okay, good. The second question is our center situation.
Well, Joe, that was kind of an answer, but go ahead, caller.
Okay, my second question is this for the 81-82 season? From what I read in the Cat's Paw, Sam Bowie, this is probably going to be his last year at Kentucky. He'll probably go hardship into professional. And I read where we not trying to recruit Pat Ewing because they said, according to the last paper, that you consider our center situation well in hand.
I could not anticipate Sam Bowie going professional.
I say I got
caller. Listen. Let Joe Hall answer the question, will you please?
I can't hardly hear him, sir.
Well, I'll pass the answer along to you if you let him.
I'll speak a little louder, Bob. I cannot anticipate Sam Bowie turning professional. I think that's a decision that Sam would have to make after all of the factors are presented, and there's no way to predict that at this time. If it were my guess, I would say that Sam would probably stay in school, and I base that on the fact that the big money is just not there for young players jumping out of college. And I don't think Sam is ready to sacrifice his college education and the opportunity to develop fully in a college program to go into professional ball. The quotes that you read in the Cat's Paws was just one person's opinion. I speak to Sam every day, and I do not get that impression. If things were right for him to go professional, then I would recognize it and wish him well. But if they weren't right for him, I'd certainly tell him what I thought, and then it would be his decision. But no way are we recruiting next year with the idea that Sam Bowie is not going to be here at Kentucky.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, Alabama, thanks for your phone call. We must move on. We appreciate your comments. Thank you for waiting. It's your turn on Sports Talk with Joe Hall. You're on Sports Talk. Go ahead.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
I'm a basketball fan here in the Midwest. I'm basically from Pennsylvania, and I do know about Sam Bowie when he's in high school because I was coming out of high school at the same time. But my question is, looking at college basketball as it was in 1980, whereas you had different teams moving up, becoming powers, do you figure 1981, for example, the LSUs, Ohio State, what have you, all the other young teams that came up, Indiana, what have you, you figure 1981 will also be an exciting basketball season?
There are so many good teams, you could name teams all night. North Carolina, Maryland, Oregon State. There are just many real good ball clubs this year. And there's an abundance of talent coming out of the high schools. There are excellent coaches with great programs and tremendous facilities. And basketball is growing to that extent. I think that it makes it more exciting to have those good teams and to make it more competitive. And I think you're exactly right. There are going to be a lot of good teams built up in the coming years.
As far as young conferences, what basketball conference you think it's not established now what could be a great basketball conference? For example, maybe the Metro or whatever conference that you might think could be a good, powerful basketball conference.
Well, I think those conferences are good conferences now. I believe that there are about 11 major conferences over the country, and all of them have good programs, and they're competitive within their conference. They're doing a good job, and the champion could come from any one of them. Metro is certainly there. Louisville won the championship last year, and the representative from their conference. The Big Ten, I think, had 7 teams in postseason play last year. The ACC has been probably the top conference in the country in basketball for several years. The SEC in the last 6 or 7 years has come out of the pack from 7 and 8 up to as high as 2nd or 3rd in the country as overall toughness. So these things are going to swing. Of course, the Pac-10 is great, and the Big 8, and you could just go on and on.
Caller, thanks for your call. We appreciate your information. Thank you for waiting. You're on Sports Talk with Joe B. Hall.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Coach Hall that he's had 2 years of back-to-back recruiting of real fine ball players and everything. And a lot of the kids were high school stars, well, all of them were, and used to publicity and everything. And now a lot of them is not going to be starting, or they'll see a lot of playing time, but they ain't going to be they won't be the big gun like they were in high school. Does he foresee a problem in kids maybe leaving the school to go somewhere else to pick up more playing time, or maybe even starting for other teams?
This is a problem that every major school in the country has. If any major school is competing in their conference and for the NCAA championship, they have good players on their squad. All of them were high school superstars. We all have the same problems. We're all limited to 15 scholarships, and at the university this year I have 11 players that were recruited athletes on scholarship, and one of those, Tom Heights, will redshirt this year, so I only have 10, and that's about the least number that you can get along with and still hold practice. We have 2 other walk-ons on scholarship, and they make a great contribution, but we're not overabundant with players. We do have good talent at every position. Notre Dame has the same situation that we have. They have, I know of 11 high school All-Americas on their squad.
Oh, my goodness.
And people seem to think that Kentucky has more talent than anyone else. We have our share, but competing as we do, you have to have good players. They come in usually with a good attitude. We do not falsify our lineup. They come in knowing the players that they have to compete against, and it's their decision to select the University of Kentucky, and they know our policy of playing our bench and all of the players having an opportunity to contribute, not just at the end of the game, but in crucial situations. And I think that's important, to be able to recruit depth, that you do use your personnel. And that's been our system here, and we have not had players leave our squad from the lack of playing time.
Coach, I'm curious, why did Tom Heights, why is he going to be redshirted this year?
Tom feels that he would like to have the extra year, that down the road that he's going to be able to contribute more to the team, and we talked it over. It was his decision. I did not suggest it to him. His mother and father are very happy with it. He's a good student, and it's not any problem academically. He just wants to have that extra year after he's matured a little more.
Well, that's terrific.
I think it's very good for Tom. This is the first player I've had to redshirt since I've been to Kentucky, and in this case, I think it's very good, and it's going to be a good program for Tom.
Yeah, Joe. The caller brought up a subject about these players and how are they going to get enough playing time when they were superstars in high school athletics. I would imagine that it's one of the most difficult things as a college football, basketball, baseball, or whatever coach to convince your players that when they were superstars in their high school basketball team, that for them to become household names and to get the most publicity, unless you're Oscar Robertson or unless you're Adrian Dantley or unless you are Darrell Griffith, that if you're on a national championship team, you're going to get a lot more publicity than you are by simply trying to be the superstar of a basketball team, which you are probably not going to be.
Right, and I think that you face this problem on every level. Players coming out of junior high to play in the high school team, They have the same kind of credentials.
True.
And they have to face the same problem. Players going out of college to pros, they have to face the same problems. It's not an unusual thing, and players are not unaware of that possibility. And when they get on a squad, and they come out the first few days, and they begin to find out that there are other great athletes there, they pretty much make the adjustment. And their chance is going to come, and they work hard and give everything they got. Well, their opportunity will probably be somewhere there in the future.
Yeah. Thanks for your call, caller. We move on to this line. Thank you for waiting. You're on Sports Talk with Joe Hall.
Yes, I'm Brian Thomas from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'd like to ask Mr. Hall and you both. You said that you picked UCLA to be first, and what do you think about the record that they had, 23-10? Do you still think they were a fluke or a real team or what, by beating Ohio State by 4?
My opinion of that is that thank you for your question. You have to consider that there were 4 freshmen playing with 1 senior. And I think a freshman team is going to lose a lot of basketball games. You look at the Kentucky Wildcats last year. They lost 6 basketball games. And I think a lot of, I'm not sure, Joe can certainly address himself to this a lot better than I can, but I would imagine that of those 6 losses, you could probably find 8 to 10 instances where inexperience really cost you the basketball game. Am I right, Joe?
That's right. And in UCLA case, they lost those games early in their year, and they picked up the momentum, and they became the Cinderella Ball Club, and certainly had tremendous talent. And sometimes you have a tendency in this area not to be acquainted with the high school talent on the West Coast. You just don't read about them as much. They don't play in high school all-star games back in this area or attend the summer camps. And you tend to overlook them. But California, year after year, has some of the best high school basketball players in the nation, and probably more than any other state in the United States.
Okay, thanks for your phone call, caller. We appreciate it. Good evening. Thank you for waiting. You're on Sports Talk with Joe Hall.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Coach?
Yes.
Coach Hall, this is your Cynthiana connection in Cincinnati, Ohio. You went to school with my mother, Margaret Custer.
Oh, yes.
And my uncle is Dewey Custer Jr.
Right.
Cats are alive and well in Cincinnati. My question to you, so much of your schedule is concerned with the SEC with 18 games. Has there been any talk about shortening the conference schedule to enable the Wildcats to go out and play some of the other teams in the country?
The coaches in the Southeastern Conference, since we have added the conference tournament, have suggested a division and cutting the conference schedule to 13 or 14 games. But nothing has been approved on that as yet. The presidents and athletic directors will make that decision, and they meet, I believe, the next meeting is in January.
Okay.
Do you think there's any feeling that it might in fact happen, Joe?
I kind of doubt it. I don't think that the conference, the athletic directors or the presidents want to cut the round robin tournament that we now have, or round robin play that we now have. They want to see all teams playing all other teams.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, anything else, caller? Cynthiana Connection, whatever you are?
That's it.
All right, thanks for your phone call.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you for calling. You're on Sports Talk with Joe Hall.
Yeah, Trump, it's Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Coach, I have 2 quick questions. Number 1, when is the UK tournament, and what are the teams that's in it?
Our tournament this year is December the 19th and 20th, Friday and Saturday nights. We play Alaska in the first game. Alabama Birmingham plays Idaho State.
Next.
I turn that around. The first game is Alabama Birmingham and Idaho State, and we play Alaska in the nightcap.
Okay, your second question, caller.
Okay, my second question. I've been a UK fan for 10 years, but I got a gripe. How much longer as a fan do we have to put up with the Kentucky conference tournament?
Well, I'm not real sure. There is a lot of objection to it, and I'm probably the one that objects the most. But it has been an exciting event in our conference. It's one that's drawn a lot of publicity, and it is a money maker. And with economics like they are, with the addition of women's athletics to our program, it's going to be difficult to cut it out. But there is some chance. We think that you cannot measure the harm that it does in distracting from the postseason tournaments, the NCAA and the NIT, and the income that could be gathered from those sources. And it's difficult to convince people that this is important to us. The days that we miss from class, the additional days for the tournament, because it is a week-long tournament, really put a hardship on the athletes.
Thanks for your call, caller. I must move on, Joe. I hate to interrupt, but we got one more caller we want to get on before we got to let you go. So thank you for waiting. It's your turn on Sports Talk with Joe B. Hall. Speak up, pal. A lot louder than you're talking now.
I'd like to know what do you plan to do with Derek Horde? Does he figure into the back court?
Bob, all I heard was Derek Horde.
He wants to know what you're going to do with Derek Horde. Does he figure in the backcourt?
Derek Horde is playing at the guard for us now, and we're really trying to give him all the exposure we can at the guard position, because we think he would be a great one if he can adjust to that position. He's already a good quick forward. We don't want to destroy that ability, but we're going to take a long, hard look at him at a guard.
Good. Joe, thanks for your call, caller. We appreciate that question, Joe. I know you start your season on, November 29th against East Tennessee State. Tomorrow night you play the South Korean national team. And best of luck to you in 1980 and 81. I always appreciate talking to you. Your observations are very incisive, and you're one of my favorites. I got to admit that, even though I get a lot of calls from Kentucky fans here, Joe, and I rip them and I snort them because they're such avid fans. I do appreciate the way you coach.
I don't think you'll hurt them at all, Bob. I appreciate what you said, and thank you very much. And I also enjoy your show.
Well, good. Thank you for listening. Joe B. Hall. Thanks again, Coach.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. That's, I repeat, I am not complimenting him simply because he is on the program. I think he's one of the finest basketball coaches there is in this country, and he has year after year after year proven that. Especially last year in the SEC tournament without Kyle Macy. The man can get it done, with or without a superstar. That's our basketball segment for this evening. We'll have Ed Badger on tomorrow night, who ain't a bad coach on later, who ain't a bad coach either. We will also have a conversation with Byron Nelson, former great professional golfer, here on Sports Talk later, and we'll talk about the free agent reentry draft held today in New York. Stay tuned.
50,000-watt clear channel voice of the Cincinnati Bengals, WLW Cincinnati, flagship station of Mariner Communications.
NBC News. I'm Steve Porter. It's still the 96th Congress, but it's beginning to sound like what the 97th may become. The Senate today approved an amendment that blocks forced busing to achieve school desegregation. And over in the House, NBC's Robert Hager reports President Carter's recent opposition to revenue sharing was rejected.
The House voted overwhelmingly today to continue sharing $4.6 billion a year in federal revenue with local communities across the nation, but voted to sharply curtail revenue sharing with state governments. The Senate has yet to act on the measure, although a Senate committee has approved a somewhat more generous bill. Differences in the two versions could cause problems, with only about 3 weeks left in the life of this lame duck Congress. Local officials who want the funds badly staged a march on the Capitol today to publicize their case. After 8 years, local governments have grown dependent on what's been nearly automatic renewal of the funds each year. Robert Hager, NBC News on Capitol Hill.